This is Democracy Watch. We have some breaking news right now. Mark, you and I have spoken at length about Donald Trump's executive order intended to protect election integrity, as he's calling it, his effort basically to usurp the election process to the federal government that should belong to the states. Can you explain the news that just broke thanks to you and your law firm?
Yeah, so just a few moments ago, my law firm filed a lawsuit on behalf of the Democratic National Committee, the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the Democratic Governors Association, as well as Senator Schumer and Leader Jeffries against Donald Trump and a whole alphabet of agencies that are empowered allegedly by Donald Trump in this executive order in what is a massive power grab by him to try to control our nation's elections. So that lawsuit was just filed in the District of Columbia in federal district court. And, the Democratic Party is going to fight tooth and nail to make sure that Donald Trump is not able to seize control of our nation's elections.
And so, Mark, if left unchallenged, what would Trump be seeking to do with his election integrity executive order?
Yeah, so really, if you think of what Trump's plan is, it has two parts, right? One is to weaponize the federal government, the parts of the federal government that deal with elections, like something called the Election Assistance Commission, right? To sort of take those over and replace the nonpartisan, or in the case of the EAC, a bipartisan commission, and basically just instruct it as if, it is these agencies operate at his whim, which, by the way, Brian, is something you and I have seen all too much of in the federal government. So that's part of what is going on here. The second is to try to have the federal government take over and dictate to the states how they conduct elections. And that violates the Constitution because the Constitution gives the states the primary authority to regulate and to run federal elections, subject only to congressional enactment, right? It says that basically the states can determine the time, place, and manner of elections unless Congress legislates otherwise. But one thing that is notable is that there is no place in that constitutional scheme for the president, and certainly none for the kind of authoritarian president that we see here in Donald Trump.
Mark, there have been a lot of lawsuits that have been waged and filed against this administration. Why was it important for your firm to get involved in this one in particular?
Yeah, so I think, Brian, you make an important point. We have not interjected ourselves into a lot of these cases because there are some great nonprofit organizations that are bringing these organizations like Democracy Forward has filed, dozens and dozens of cases, the ACLU, Public Citizen, State Democracy Defenders, other organizations that have really brought really important litigation. We have filed now, this is our second case. The first one involved Donald Trump's effort to take over the Federal Election Commission, which is how elections are financed. This one, also on behalf of the Democratic Party, as that first one was, tries to protect against a takeover by Donald Trump of the election rules. So, we specialize in election litigation, things that deal with voting rights, preventing election deniers, election denialism, preventing against election subversion. And so, this was an important case for us to be involved in, but most importantly, it was an important case for our clients to be involved in. And so that's why we brought this case.
Well, look, I want to take a moment as a quick aside here for everybody watching. I mean, this is Mark and his team putting their money where their mouth is. I mean, we've done a lot of episodes about, having law firms stand up to the worst excesses of this administration in stark contrast to the law firms who opt not to, those law firms who opt to capitulate. And so not only are you not capitulating, but you're actually taking it to the Trump administration in court, which obviously is where you shine. So
and Donald Trump by name. He is the name
by name. That's
case.
Right.
Yeah. Like people are watching every day as the legacy media is afraid of Donald Trump. Last I checked, they were reviewing the seating chart that Donald Trump has given them for the White House, while also figuring out whether what entertainment they would like at the black tie dinner they are throwing for him.
Right.
Then you have law firms that we have seen capitulate one after another, and afraid to take on Donald Trump. So I appreciate the shout out, but my law firm, we're not going to be bowed. We're not going to be afraid to take him on. And Democracy Docket, the news outlet I formed, it is also fearlessly independent and pro-democracy and will not be cowed.
And to that point, a small step that we can all take to support Marc and his team for the work that they're doing to protect our democracy more broadly is to sign up for Democracy Docket if you haven't yet signed up. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Marc, I know that you wouldn't have filed this lawsuit if you didn't think that your chances were good, but I do have to ask, how are your chances in this lawsuit, in this particular case?
Yeah, look, I feel really strongly that our chances are excellent. First, because, as I mentioned, the president doesn't actually have authority over federal elections. Donald Trump sort of learned this lesson in 2020.
It's probably a pretty good place to start in a lawsuit that challenges Donald Trump usurping all power over elections, the fact that he literally does not have the power to oversee all elections.
Yeah, right. So Donald Trump should have learned this lesson when my team and I litigated on behalf of the Biden campaign and the DNC in 2020 and beat him more than 60 times in court. And then, if you remember, he tried to assert authority over federal elections. And of all people, Bill Barr, not exactly a
resistance hero.
Yeah, not exactly a left-wing activist, told him, Mr. President, you don't have any authority here, right? This is up to the states, not up to the executive branch. Well, Donald Trump is going to try to assert that authority anyway through this executive order, and I don't think this is the last one we'll see. So he's going to lose on that grounds. But then the other piece, as I mentioned, is his authority over what the federal government does do with respect to elections. We have seen him already, dismantle some of the agencies that protect against foreign threats in elections. I wonder why it is that Donald Trump is so eager to not have the federal government prevent, for example, Russia from interfering in federal elections. But in this instance, it's some other agencies that operate on a bipartisan basis that do technical advising, do some forms, important government forms for voter registration, oversee certification of election equipment and the like. And he is trying to take over those agencies, and that's not going to succeed either.
Do you have any concern that as Donald Trump continues to ignore the will of the courts, that he will be able to cow election officials, even despite what happens in this particular lawsuit, that he'll be able to cow local election officials into doing his bidding because he's kind of laid the marker down and sent out the clarion call? And so regardless of what happens in court, these people have kind of gotten their marching orders at the state level, and they've already shown themselves perfectly willing to bend the knee to Trump, to grovel to him in any way that they can.
Yeah, look, Brian, I think you put your finger right on the great challenge of our time, right? It's the challenge of this generation, is that large institutions and small institutions alike are just bowing down preemptively to him. We saw it with the media. We see it with corporate America. We see it with the universities. We see it with the law firms. It's what you and I talk about all the time about how, the work you do, you don't pull your punches when it comes to Donald Trump. Democracy, we don't pull our punches. In the legal cases, we don't pull our punches. But do I think that there are going to be some states, particularly Republican-controlled states, some counties, some local election officials, particularly Republicans, who are going to think, well, even if this is illegal, we're going to follow it? Yeah, I worry about that. But here's my message to that. I am well known for suing states. I am well known for winning in litigation against localities. We have sued election deniers who have refused to follow the law of their states. And my message to them is that if there is any Republican official, if there is any state or any county that thinks that they are just going to take the easy way out, in their view, by disregarding the law, by disregarding the constitutional rights of their citizens, and instead trying to suck up to Donald Trump, they're going to get sued and they're going to lose.
Marc, there's no doubt that Trump feels threatened by you. That's why he called you out by name while he was, making his speech in front of the Justice Department. Do you think that the fact that this is a rare instance in which your law firm has decided to directly intervene against an illegal executive order that he put out, that will have some type of chilling effect on his willingness to kind of barrel ahead in the same way that he's done against other law firms, against other organizations?
Look, I think a couple of things. The first is Donald Trump obviously knows who I am and doesn't like me, and I wear his scorn like a badge of honor. And so, like if this gives him another reason to not like me, then it's another reason for him to not like me. There is nothing Donald Trump is going to say or do that is going to deter me from fighting with every fiber in my being against his authoritarianism, whether it's as a lawyer in court, whether it's as the founder of Democracy.com with publishing news information analysis, whether it's just a citizen speaking out. Like nothing about that is going to change. Now, the question is whether it deters Donald Trump from taking certain action because he hates to lose. And I tend to represent to him someone who repeatedly humiliates him and his lawyers in court.
Yeah.
So, the question whether or not, he will do less bad things because he knows I will be involved in litigating or my firm will be involved in litigating, who the hell knows? Who knows what makes him tick? But all we can do is fight against all of the bad things he wants to do across a range of industries, across a range of kinds of cases, across a range of tactics. God bless the people who are exercising their First Amendment rights around other issues that cause in which Donald Trump is trying to destroy the fabric of our society. But that's the obligation of every lawyer. It's the obligation of every media organization. It's the obligation, like I said, of every citizen. And I'm happy to do my part.
And finally, let's finish off with this. We obviously have a little bit of lead time here, but we have seen the ways in which the Trump administration will exploit delays to get past the point where a judge would usually rein them in. And so, yes, we have the advantage right now of a lot of lead time. Can you talk about what we should expect next and whether you think that this process is going to be able to play itself out in a timely enough manner that we won't encounter any issue for the 2026 election cycle?
Yeah. So look, I think that you are exactly right that Donald Trump is bringing this executive order forward very early in his administration and with a lot of time to litigate. And kudos, by the way, as I said, to the Democratic Party and Democratic leadership for being willing to take on this fight as they did, the one involving the Federal Election Commission. It shows that the National Democratic Party really is standing up here to Trump. But the fact is, this won't be the last thing we see from Trump. Like there is, as you say, a lot of time to litigate this one, but he will continue to do bad things. And so here is how I think of the progression and where I think the risks come and where I think we all need to be prepared. Right now, he's trying to figure out who he can intimidate by simply acting. So we've seen he's been able to intimidate media organizations. He's been able to intimidate corporations. He's been able to intimidate universities. And he's been able to intimidate some of the largest, most powerful law firms in the country simply by taking these very early steps in his administration. I think he is trying to see whether he can intimidate parts of the executive branch and some states into acting, even if we litigate successfully. What we will see next is a continued assault on democratic norms and democratic institutions. I don't think we've seen the last law firm targeted. I don't think we've seen the last corporate segment of corporate America targeted. He's going to try and sort of whittle down the opposition to the core group of people who will stand up to them. And you will be in that core group. I will be in that core group, and others will be as well. And then when we get closer to the elections, I think you're exactly right. We will see him launch another round of actions against free and fair elections. Those may be actions brought through the Department of Justice using the criminal process. They may be brought through other federal agencies. They may be brought through his sycophantic supporters in state government, governors and state legislatures, or we may start to see third-party right-wing vigilante activity. I mean, let's remember, he pardoned a whole lot of people who stormed the Capitol. Yeah. And, those people may be radicalized and advocates. We're seeing Elon Musk, paying millions of dollars to people in a Wisconsin election. And so I think we all need to steel ourselves for what we're going to see in the 2025 elections in November in the states that have them, and certainly in 2026. But it is the job of all of us to not give up and not become defeatist. We all need to stand up for democracy. We all need to insist that we have free and fair elections. And the lawyers need to do their jobs, but so do the citizens. We all need to prepare ourselves for what could be a challenging set of circumstances as Donald Trump's administration rolls forward, and certainly as we head towards 2026.
Well, look, again, I speak on behalf of everybody who's watching right now in saying thank you for not just talking the talk, but walking the walk as it relates to the corruption and the illegality of this administration and taking them on head first. And that's what we're seeing here. So again, for folks watching, if you'd like to support, take one small step to support the invaluable work that Marc and his team are doing, please sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.